then we will go ahead and get started with the budget hearing on the Kansas State Library. So Norma, you're up if you'll go ahead and start for us. Thank you.
Certainly, Madam Chair. Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay in the committee room and on WebEx?
If you could be a little louder, that'd be good.
Certainly. Is that better? All right, so in front of you, you should have a state library budget analysis. You'll see an operating expenditures and capital improvements table, and then the agency overview. Just real quickly with the agency overview, I'll note that the state library has served the state since 1855, and it's existed in its current form since 1963 with the passage of the State Library Act. It is headed by the state librarian, who is currently Eric Norris, and he is also available on WebEx, and he'll be testifying after my budget presentation. The mission of the state library is to deliver 21st century library services. Excuse me. 21st century library services and resources to all Kansas residents. Strives to increase reading readiness and on-grade reading acuity and improve chances for academic success. And it helps local businesses start and grow and assist Kansas residents with employment opportunities. And I will note that delivering 21st century library service resources has been its motto since about 2010, so for basically about 10 years. Turning the page, I'll note that page 2 and page 3 include the major issues over the last 10 years, and then the high-level key points for the budget summary. And I'll have you focus onto page 4, which is the performance measures. In particular, I'll note to that first performance measure, which is the number of children participating in summer reading program. In 2020, you'll see an increase. This is primarily due to the means of tracking the children participating in the summer reading program. So in fiscal year 2020, the state library purchased a software called Reader Zone. And this allowed each public library in the state of Kansas to open its own account, and within that account, to have children open their own accounts to track their reading. Prior to that, reporting was simply not as concise because each library was attempting to track all of the children involved in the program. This resource will be continued through August 2021, at which point the state library plans to reassess the program. Turning on page 5, you'll see a 10-year operating expenditures breakdown. And then page 6 has the summary of operating expenditures for fiscal year 2020, 2021, and 2022. And on page 7 is where I'll start my main budget presentation. So you'll see budget overview, and underneath that, fiscal year 2021 current year. I'll note that there were 2 main adjustments to the budget approved by the 2020 legislature. First, an increase of about $740,000. This was funding that was reappropriated from fiscal year 2020 to 2021. Excuse me. And you'll also see a decrease of about $20,000 due to the governor's allotments. Below the change from approved budget table, I'll note that the agency is requesting a revised estimate of $5.9 million, including $3.9 million SGF in fiscal year 2021. This is an all funds decrease of about $750,000 or 11.4%, including an SGF decrease of about $720,000 or 15.5%, below the amount approved by the 2020 legislature. That decrease is primarily attributable to the agency requesting that $740,000 reappropriated be deleted. These funds were essentially appropriated and then went unspent because the state library closed due to COVID-19. And the agency's revised estimate includes 31.0 FTE, which is 1 FTE position more than the number approved by the 2020 legislature. That increase is just attributable to the adding of a library consultant FTE position. And the governor concurred with the agency's revised estimate. Turning the page to page 8, I'll draw your attention to the top with the governor's allotments. Allotments included in this budget total just under $20,000, and it included an allotment for operating expenditures and then some for talking book services. And I will pause here for any questions on fiscal year 2021.
Okay, thank you. Representative Riley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could I just have an explanation of this new terminology to me of allotments, governor's allotments? Thank you.
Norma, you can do that, or I can do it, but go ahead if you want to.
Sorry, Madam Chair, he got cut out a little at the beginning, so I didn't hear the full question.
He would like to know, to have a definition of allotment, the governor's allotment, or possibly Shirley wants to answer it, whatever. It's a broad question, but it's a good question. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know that I have an exact definition of allotments here. The allotment plan is was issued on June 29th, 2020. It's essentially funding that was appropriated that the governor could allot during an interim, which is just means that they delete it from the budget.
Yeah, so do you mind if I interject here just to, okay. So when the estimates are much lower, when they're anticipating estimates to be much lower, and therefore we're not going to have our balanced budget, the governor is required, and I don't know the timing on that, but the governor is required to make allotments. And that means to cut programs so that the revenue estimates are more aligned with budgets. And so when someone says they got an allotment, it really means a reduction, that the governor reduced by a certain amount. And she made allotments across all the state departments. And this particular one had an allotment of $19,538. Shirley, would you say you go ahead if you have
No,
something you
that's
want to add.
perfect. The only thing I would interject is the governor can only allot state general fund money. So when we talk about allotments, we're specifically talking about state general fund dollars.
Okay, thank you. That's a great question that I'm sure there's others that don't understand. Okay, any other questions for fiscal year 2021 so far with the state library? Okay, Norma, please continue.
Sure. And I'll just note too, I did the statute that governs allotments is KSA 75-3722. So then moving on to fiscal year, 22, you should still be on page 8. You'll see fiscal year 22 budget year and then a large table. Underneath that table, I'll note that the agency is requesting operating expenditures of $5.8 million, including $3.9 million SGF for fiscal year 2022. This is an all funds decrease of about $34,000 or 0.6%, including an SGF increase of about $3,000 or 0.1% from fiscal year 2021 revised estimate. That decrease is primarily due to the ending of a marketing strategy in Western Kansas that was completed in fiscal year 2021. And moving on to page 9, I'll note that the agency's request included 31 FTE positions, which is the same as the revised estimate from fiscal year 2021, and that the governor recommended a decrease of $4,000 all SGF below the agency's request due to the partial acceptance of the submitted reduced resources budget. And you'll see below that the fiscal year 2022 reduced resources budget. So the agency submitted a reduced resources budget of $393,000 all SGF for fiscal year 2022. That includes a 10% reduction in state aid, a 10% reduction to talking books, elimination of travel mileage reimbursement, reducing professional organizational fees, eliminating recovery payments to the Kansas Library Express courier system, and reducing upcoming subscription and due renewals. The governor partially concurred with the agency's reduced resources budget, as I noted, recommending a reduced resources budget of $4,000 for fiscal year 2022, which included the elimination of travel mileage reimbursement and reduction of professional organizational fees. And I'll have you now turn to page 11. And this is the two funding sources. I'll note that the main federal funding source for the state library is the Library Services and Technology Act Fund, which is governed by the Institute of Museum and Library Services Reauthorization and includes funding for improving library services, facilitating access to resources, and encouraging resource sharing across libraries nationwide. In particular, I'll note that the state library did receive a one-time allocation of about $263,000 in fiscal year 2020 under the Federal CARES Act through that fund. And then beginning on page 12, you'll see the program detail. So prior to fiscal year 2021, there were 2 programs, administration and services to the blind and handicapped. Beginning in fiscal year 2021, all agency expenditures will be budgeted under the administration program only. And I will end my presentation there and stand for any questions.
Thank you, Norma. Representative Riley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I ask, was there any reflection in this budget based on possibly carryover of the 2020 less payroll costs for FTEs? Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, if I may, there was some funding reappropriated from fiscal year 2020 to fiscal year 2021. That was $740,000. And the agency did request that that money was deleted, and the governor did concur with that request in fiscal year 2021.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions? Norma, I did have a question, and you may have answered this just now, but on page 5, and I'm going back to 2021, I think. The governor's recommendation, the percent change, you know, there was a big 17.8% change upward on the graph. Can you explain what that is? The 2021 governor's recommendation had the 17.8% change.
Certainly, Madam Chair, members of the committee, and you'll see this on a lot of budgets. So that's the percent change over years. So you have the change from each year, and then you'll have at the total the 10-year change. So that is a percent change. That's an increase of about 17.8% from the fiscal year 2020 approved amount.
I was just curious why it was so much when most of the other ones were downward.
I don't have a particular reason necessarily. Part of that could just be the reappropriation. You had a much smaller approved amount. There was an increase from the fiscal year 2020 to fiscal year 2021 of about $600,000. So if that's about 17.8% of its SGF budget, that was just the approved increase. That is the approved amount.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Representative Riley?
Perhaps, you know, looking back, that chart maybe reflects exactly what I was saying, the less operating expenses in 2020, because there is about $410,000 reduction. Maybe that did show a reflection in less payroll, less expenses. And so when that 2020 expense, because we were so shut down, now we're trying to recover back from that. And I'm just leading into that. I'm not sure that's true, but that's a possibility of what I was looking at of 2020. Since everything was so shut down, it saved a whole lot of money on payroll expenses and different things. Thank you.
Good thought. Okay. Anyone else have any questions for Norma at all? Okay, I think we're great. Thank you so much, Norma. Appreciate it. Okay, now I will call on and welcome to our committee Eric Norris, our state librarian. Welcome, Eric.
Hello, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. First off, thank you, Chair Humphreys and the entire committee for your time and attention today and for allowing verbal testimony to be provided via WebEx. Also, thank you to Norma for her introductory overview and for all of the work that goes into preparing our budget. My name is Eric Norris. I serve as the 17th State Librarian of Kansas, a position I've held since 2018. The roots of our service extend back to 1855 when the Territorial Libraries of Kansas was established, and today we serve the entire population of Kansas, approximately 2.9 million people, through 3 coordinated divisions: Reference, Statewide Services, and Talking Books. The primary responsibilities of the Reference Division are to provide library and research services in support of state legislators, executive agencies, local governments, and individual Kansas residents, and also to preserve and provide access to the publications of state government. This is achieved through both an in-house physical collection and an online collection called the Kansas Governmental Information Database, or KGI. The primary responsibilities of the Statewide Services Division are to provide support and direct services to the 325 public libraries in Kansas. This reflects the number of libraries that fit the federal definition of a public library, the number of hours they're open, that they have hired staff, a few other criteria. But if you count all the branches, volunteer, and neighborhood sites, there are 413 libraries at separate locations across the state. Statewide services also provide relevant and reliable e-content to the residents of Kansas, primarily through online databases, learning and career building modules, and downloadable content such as ebooks and digital audio, as well as providing support for the summer reading program, the statewide interlibrary loan effort, and the courier, which can provide up to 5 days a week delivery service to participating libraries. Primary responsibilities of the Talking Book Division are to provide specific and specialized services to the 5,000 Kansas residents and organizations who are registered patrons of Talking Books. Working with the National Library Service for the Blind and Print Disabled, which is a division of the Library of Congress, over 145,000 items were circulated in fiscal year 2020. As you heard in the overview, we came in under budget in fiscal year 2020. As libraries and businesses were shutting down across the state, we understood that we would all be facing a very serious financial situation. In my written testimony, I explained that we went into maintenance mode. What I mean by that is we cut off spending beyond salaries, benefits, and our monthly obligations such as phone and the internet. Most of the appropriation that went unspent was from our interlibrary loan development budget unit, where we invest in library services across the entire state. And with many libraries closing in a climate of uncertainty, we chose to hold those funds instead of spending without a purpose or a plan. Spending was further curbed because we were able to collaborate with some of our larger vendors of our online services, which they were generous enough to offer some of their deluxe packages for free to the Kansas residents for a limited period of time. It was also reported by Norma in the overview that we received federal CARES grant for $263,000 from the Institute of Museums and Library Services through their LSTA grant. This is the same program through which we receive annual federal funding. With the money, we did 3 things. First, we paid $22,000 for a 2-year subscription to ReaderZone, a software that allows for libraries to create an online account and sign up their patrons for summer reading logs, tracking their minutes and titles read, as well as create online programs. Second, we created a tiered per capita sub-grant for public libraries. With a service population of less than 1,000, they could receive $500. Those with a population of 1,000 to 10,000 could receive $750. And those with a population of over 10,000 could receive $1,000. We ended up distributing $122,000 directly to 172 public libraries who applied. Then we took the remaining money and issued a $17,000 sub-grant to each of the 7 regional library systems in Kansas. We purposely kept the overriding caveat of those two grants as simple as we could and within the limits of the guidance required by IMLS. And that was the money was to be spent to prevent, prepare for, and respond to the spread of the coronavirus. Over the course of the year since I last stood before this committee, 2 changes of note have stood out above the chaos and confusion. The first is the consolidation in December of our ebook and digital audiobook collections into a single platform. Previously, our patrons needed to switch between 2 different platforms to look for titles in either RB Digital for digital audio or Cloud Library for ebooks. Each company provided only one format. Over the summer, a separate company called Overdrive announced their pending purchase of RB Digital, and this put us in a situation of changing to a new platform, which would require extensive format adjustments, changes in policy, and many hours of training for the public, librarians, and state library staff. The announcement spurred Cloud Library into creating digital audio capabilities, and we were able to move most of our digital audio collection onto the current Cloud Library platform. With our annual subscription cost to Cloud Library, it will remain the same, and by eliminating the subscription to RB Digital, we will have more funds going to provide content for patrons. The second is a service model change to our Talking Books division. We have begun the process of download on demand, which will allow us direct access and delivery of any title available from NLS. The advantage of this change is twofold from the previous delivery method. Foremost, it is that download on demand makes delivery of requested materials to patrons a much quicker process. We're able to load titles directly onto a blank cartridge and send it through the mail in a day or two, instead of requesting the physical cartridge from another library somewhere in the United States and then sending it to the patron once we receive it in the mail from that holding library. This process can take at least a week or two, if not more, if copies are being used across the nation. The second is the new system will allow us to load up to 20 titles on a single cartridge. The storage capacity of the old cartridges was so small, many titles required 2 cartridges to hold an entire recording. This will in turn save us time and effort of sending so many items through the mail. Looking forward to the rest of 2021, we're excited to develop our collection of digital titles, add a few much needed staff members to our employee roster, and examine our current policies and practices, making adjustments through the lens of what we've learned in this crisis. The past year has shown us what we are good at, where we are strong, and what needs to be reevaluated, adjusted, and changed. The strength of a library lies in our ability to adapt and evolve, and libraries have done that many times in our collective history, and the challenges we have recently faced will help us to strengthen those abilities. We are in agreement with the governor's budget recommendation and ask the committee to vote in favor. This concludes my testimony, and I will stand for questions at the convenience of the committee. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much. Okay, committee. Does anyone have any questions? Representative Wassinger.
First, I want to thank the state librarian because he is from Hayes and he is amazing. But I have a few questions for you, Eric. Number one, could you explain to me, and you might have already done this, what the library consultant does? That's my first question. And then I'd like you to kind of delve into your blind and handicapped area and trying to see the difference between the talking books and the blind and handicapped budget. Good, please. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much for the question. The first part, the library consultant, what that is, over the course of last year, we lost our IT administrator. And it was a personnel issue that happened, and that position has remained open. When we looked at what we needed to address with that opening, it was kind of a larger picture than just a straightforward IT consulting type of job, to where we want the new person to come in. The position is still open, by the way, but we want the new person to come in to have more of a role in not only helping the state library with our IT issues, but being able to reach out and help other libraries and regional systems with their IT needs, and be able to collaborate with programs across those different organizations. And when we started looking at that, we realized that the definition fit more of a library consultant type position. So it is an IT library consultant. And I'm sorry, Representative Wassinger, could you repeat the second part of the question? What is it, diving into the talking books?
Yes, Madam Chair, do you mind if I second?
Okay.
What is the difference between the blind and the handicap budget and the talking books? Since, you know, my mother was blind when she passed, so I understand the need for all of that. I'm trying to figure out how you've divided that up and where it all comes from and where it goes.
Okay. The division that we have is called the Talking Books. They work hand in hand with the national organization that is with the Library of Congress called the National Library Service for the Blind and Print Disabled. So our Talking Books division is basically a state entity in the state of Kansas of that Library of Congress national entity.
So, but I'm sorry, I'm just not,
Oh, you're fine.
there's services to the blind and handicapped are separate from the rest of your budget. And Talking Books seemed like that was separate as well. I'm trying to figure out what the correlation is there.
Before I started in my first year here, we had two separate programs in our budget. So we had our regular administrative costs that were for the library, and then we had Talking Books. And sometimes Talking Books is referred to as the blind and print disabled, but it's still that Talking Books division. During my first year, we made efforts to bring those two budget programs together. So when we created our budgets initially, before my time, there was the administrative cost for the state library was one program, and there was another program for Talking Books. And then in 2019, I believe, is when we consolidated the two. So that way we only have one program, and it helped with just the bookkeeping portion of it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, other questions, but I do just, there's some sort of Braille component here too, right? Which, is that part of what you were asking? Like what, physically, like what is the difference between the services that you offer? I think it's what maybe a little bit, what Barb was asking.
Thank you. There is a Braille component to the Talking Book service. We run a subscription to a national Braille service that would allow us to lend Braille items to our patrons. So essentially how it works is that if a person out in Kansas has a physical disability that won't allow them to read normal conventional materials, or even to use like iPhones to listen to audio, it's very easy to get registered with the Talking Books as basically a special patron in Kansas. And so if your needs happen to be that you need items in Braille, we can track those down for you. You put the request in with the Talking Books division. If your need is with the Talking Books and just the regular audio, the recordings, we do have special equipment that we send out to patrons who are registered with us. And like I said, there's right around 5,000 right now in the state, and then we will supply them with the machine, and then also send the cartridges to them for the mailing is actually free in the mail. Did that answer your question?
Much. Thank you very much, Eric.
Okay, yes, Representative Riley, and then, go ahead, Representative Riley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just as a highlight, though, of what Eric was saying, that this is our first budget that we worked. Our last two budgets that we worked were simply fee-based. What our budgets that we're working today are out of SGF, and I'm assuming very, very little fee money comes into the library. Is that correct? Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. We have the only fee money that would come in. All the library services are free of charge. The only fee money that we have come in at any time would be when we're open to normal traffic and people come in and use our copy machine. So the only fees that we collect are 10 cents a time per page on a copy machine.
Okay, thank you. Representative Amix.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Eric, the 31 FTEs that you have, are all those positions full right now?
Thank you, Representative. They are not. Right now, we are operating at a 25 FTE capacity.
Madam Chair, if I could ask one more. And Eric, what's our plan on filling those remaining 6 positions in? And time frame?
Thank you, sir. Right now, we have that one position that's open, that is the IT library consultant. that's running through, and I am getting ready to submit a request to fill 2 other positions. We are wanting to really kind of take our time over this next year. This IT library consultant position we've had open for a very long period of time. It's been open for over 7 months, I believe. I think it's been difficult with things that are going on with unemployment. I think that people I don't know if I could speculate into why people haven't really applied for it. The last round of applicants that we got were coming from convenience stores and other places to where they were probably laid off and didn't really meet the criteria for the position. And so we're hoping to get that filled. We changed it just a little bit and rework the requirements on it. And that's open right now. We are getting ready to put in a request to fill possibly 2 other positions here during the course of the spring and summer.
Yes, go ahead.
So as we weather the COVID storm, our plan is to make sure that we're back at capacity for employees sometime this year then, correct?
That's correct, sir. We are
Assuming availability of employees.
Absolutely. And I am, we do want to have the right person with the right temperament in the right position with us. So we're not just grabbing people as they come along.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you.
As a follow-up, quickly, Eric, can you say besides the 1 extra FTE, what are those other 5 positions that you don't have filled right now?
All of our positions are, the positions that we have open, I think are all listed as either library 1 or 2 positions that we have open, or library consultant positions. I think that's one of the few, or the only couple position titles that we have right now. Okay. And I will add that many years ago, probably 8 to 10 years ago, we were operating at a full capacity, upwards of 30 FTEs. And if not above that, but I just know that over the years it got whittled away. And what it does is it does put a lot more responsibility on the staff members that we have. Not having that IT position filled during this time has been incredibly difficult, and we do have staff members that have really stepped up and gone above and beyond their job descriptions to make sure that we're still able to offer the services that we can.
Okay, Representative Rajas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There was a lot of people with bill introduction transportation, so I apologize for being late. I thought I was the only one, and there was a stack. So, Eric, always great to see you. I guess it seems like we find a topic to write out, and I think it's this blind handicapped. I'm looking at the budget, and I know it was explained as I was arriving, but was because of COVID, some of those services weren't allowed to take place, because I'm seeing expenditures of in 19, an actual expenditure $562,070. The actual 2020 88.9, and again that was only a few months of COVID. I mean, what is that basically what happened? Those that needed services for blind, visually impaired, whatever, and handicapped, were they just left behind because of COVID?
Thank you for the question, sir. No, they were not. The expenditures that I had at the end of the year, we had spent down, the way our budget's set up inside the program is we do have 4 separate budget units. And the talking books is one separate budget unit, and it normally gets an expenditure of about $430,000, right around in there. I do believe in fiscal year 2020, the report that I got from SMART at the end of it is we did spend most of that down. The biggest deficit that we had in our budget fell in the budget unit that is described as the interlibrary loan development budget unit is what it was. We did have a period to where, because of the uncertainty about how the virus would be transmitted, and the vulnerability of those particular patrons in the talking books patrons, we did shut down services for about 4 weeks, and that was at a national level that I believe that got shut down. And then when we were able to open things back up and move along, so we did spend most of the Talking Books budget down as far as what I was aware at the end of fiscal year 20.
Well, I appreciate the services you provide. I appreciate doing the best you can to bring along our regional systems. I happen to be in a place where my district has 2 of them, and they do a great job communicating, and I'm invited to their libraries. And again, COVID kind of shut down that little mini tour we had last year. And I know we talked about it in a couple of years past. You might just kind of share the vision of where you see the Kansas State Library, moving on, from here, because we see a dramatic change because of COVID, the way we interact, like with you, and utilizing technology. Are you planning a vision for the future of the Kansas State Library?
Thank you, sir. That is an incredible question. We have really looked at, one of the advantages that we have noticed is the ability to utilize Zoom and utilize other platforms like this to reach out across the state to where people would not normally be able to join a meeting or join a committee just because of the travel time that's involved or the expense that would be with it. So that is definitely something that I know the overriding library association in Kansas is called the Kansas Library Association, or KLA. That is part of other larger national organizations such as the American Library Association, or ALA. And those 2 organizations have shifted their conferences to completely online, and it's caused a little bit of consternation because everybody is looking to get back to that balance of being able to meet an appropriate setting like this, to where it's just a matter of time and travel. But everybody is looking forward to getting those conferences back face to face. And I think that goes across every agency, and every social group is looking to get back together. However, we were really, one of the things that we did this year was that we embarked on a marketing campaign that I believe Norman had kind of spoke a little bit about earlier this year, was the marketing campaign, because we have so many services that are online, and it is such a task to remind librarians that we are, that these are the services that are available. It's a task to remind and reach out to residents that these services are available to them directly, without any limits other than the limits of internet and broadband, and that's a completely different issue. But one of the things that we do throughout the year that we weren't able to is hold those sessions to where we're giving training and we're talking about our services. So we relied on a marketing campaign this year, and we saw an uptick in our e-library card renewals. We saw an uptick in a lot of our services that were online. And so we're learning from that. We're learning about different ways to market ourselves, because we do need to do that. If people don't use the services, if they don't know they're there.
One more, Madam Chairman?
Yes.
Okay, and again, looking at the budget, just in 2022, because this may get brought up, and it says the governor partially concurs with the reduced resource budget, eliminating travel budget reimbursement, reducing professional organizational fees. I guess my question is, these fees, I assume that's for staff members to have some credentials. Is that right? What will that change, if any, if that budget is passed and you don't have the resources for some of these association memberships? What could that possibly mean?
Thank you for that question, sir. The state library, when we were looking at this, putting together that reduced resource package, we needed to find places to make that 10% cut all the way across the board. With the travel reimbursements and things, there are times to where people need to grab their own car to go somewhere for consulting, or or do something along those lines. That is the type of the physical travel itself to where we'd reimburse for mileage. I believe that would be something that would be cut out. Fortunately, we do have an old, well, I say old, I don't mean to do that, but we have a Corolla, Toyota Corolla that the state library owns that we can use to send people out when we are all coming back together if they need consulting work that's done face to face. As far as the memberships go, there were a few memberships that we would hold on to because it's kind of part of what you do when you're in that organization. And the ones that were getting a little further maybe away from what our core values were, we looked at cutting those back. But we will maintain our institutional membership in ALA and KLA. As far as the individuals go, the agency does not pay for individual memberships to different organizations along those lines. And there is really no credential that's needed to maintain your librarianship once you're here. So it's mostly just the face-to-face travel and reimbursing people for gas mileage and that. So it will cut back, and we'll have to figure out a way to get the car down.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, you're welcome. Okay, so Eric, I do have a couple questions, and we do need to kind of hasten along because we still have the Historical Society, but can you explain your relationship to the other libraries around the state? You've alluded to it, but I don't think I understand exactly what is the relationship.
Thanks for the question. We are, so there is no authority that the state library has over any local library. Every library in the state of Kansas is under local authority. And there's tiered levels of help that go along with that. According to statutes, there's, back in the 60s, regional library systems were organized. So you have 105 counties across the state. There are 7 regional library systems. They're kind of divided up. They provide, they do their own taxing. They're their own authority. They provide certain amount of services to the members in their library. And then we provide through the state general fund, we provide state aid, which is one of our budget units that we simply act as a pass-through for that $1 million. It comes to us that we ask the libraries that they meet 2 easy requirements, and then we move that money along to them. But there is no level of authority. We work hand in hand, and our job at the state library is to support the local efforts at public libraries as we can, to support the efforts of the regional library systems as we can, and then to generally provide services to all Kansas residents.
Okay, thank you. So when I'm looking at your expenditures, I don't see it broken down quite so easily for me to understand what are salaries and what are you passing through from the SGF to the other libraries. Is that the contractual services of 1.2 million? Or what is, and if not, what are those contractual services of 1.2 million? And then how do I understand what you're passing through?
Thank you for that question. When I get the report when I get the governor's budget, it's broken down into different budgeting units than the contractual services. And let me get this pulled up again.
Madam Chair, this is Norma. I might be able to better point you to an answer.
Okay, thank you.
So if you look at page 6 of your budget presentation, BA, you'll see the aid to local units about halfway down the table. So the major expenditures. Aid to local units are generally those funds that go out to, in this case, other public libraries. Another example would be the Department of Education budget. They have aid to local units, so that's money that goes to school districts. So that's going to be that funding source that is essentially pass-through money, as Eric put it.
Okay, very helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Norma. So Eric, what on the bottom of page 14, and maybe this could be for you, Norma, but the contractual services are 1.2 million from SGF. What is that?
So Madam Chair, you're looking at page 14, you'll note the major categories of expenditures. So that is for fiscal year 2022, there were contractual services expenditures of 2.3 million in total, and 1.2 million of that was state general fund money.
Yeah, but what is that, what are those contractual services is what I was wondering.
Madam Chair, I can answer.
Okay, thank you.
I do believe that the state aid money that we have, that we look at from the governor's budget, does fall underneath those contractual services, I believe.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if you'd
Because-
like, I have a
Well,
definition.
Okay, that's fine. I will say, Norma, though, that the aid to local units, now, maybe that's because some of it, this is all funds. Okay, go ahead. Definition would be great. Thank you.
So the definition for contractual services, and this is for all budgets, are those payments for various services like communications, travel, utilities, consultant services being, for example, a contract out to another organization for some form of data or database.
Yeah, that's what I would assume. So thank you for that. I just was curious, since I feel like it is our duty to review these budgets, what are you using that 1.2 million in contractual services for? That's, and if it's like, it seemed like travel, you've cut down on that. So, and maybe that's something you want to get back to us, hopefully before tomorrow when we're making recommendations.
I can answer. Thank you. I can answer that question now.
Okay.
Part of those contractual services are when you look at our databases that we offer out, the total overriding cost to those online databases is close to like 1.2 million. And we split that cost between, depending on the year and depending on where our budget's most healthiest, we do split that cost between the LSTA funds, the federal funds that we receive, and I think it would be what's considered the contractual services as well.
Okay, that's helpful. That's probably a big chunk of it.
It is.
Okay, and then my last question is, when I look at the mission, your mission, which was on the first page of Norma's analysis, and then I look at your performance measures, which I hear you saying you're wanting to put everything under administration. I kind of look at performance like, is that part of the mission? I would like to know, of your 31 FTEs, how many of those are actually helping to start and grow businesses and assist Kansas residents with employment opportunities? Or how many have to do with reading readiness? I'm thinking your mission is part of the performance we should look at if you're fulfilling that. And I may be just throwing that at you and it's out of the blue, so you might not have an answer to that question, but just so you know, we're thinking about it. But if you have an answer, that would be great.
Thank you for that question. The mission and the performance values that we have in place, there really does need to be, I think, some work to go across this mission statement that we've had here for a while. We're quite a ways into the 21st century at this point, and I think that just as far as a slogan goes, we need to reevaluate that. But as far as applying just this specific task to this specific employee, there are so many things that sort of go into that. It does make it difficult to say this. We don't have a person that's just overseas helping with employment opportunities, because that falls under statewide services, and it falls underneath the opportunities that we allow for the learning modules. It falls into different trainings that go along with public libraries, so they can help people in their capacity. And it also does bleed over into the other divisions. I choose to look at it in terms of what the divisions do as far as working towards the general goal of the state library. Does that answer your question? Sure.
Somewhat. Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate that. Okay, I think we will go ahead and close this portion of our, the budget analysis. Thank you, Norma. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. I have someone else that's going to speak. Sarah, yes. So thank you, Eric, and thank you, Norma. And now Sarah, well, if you would like to share with us. Yes. Sarah on, I see you. I think you're muted.
Madam Chair, I believe Sarah Lockyer was just also going to be available for questions.
Okay.
She didn't have a formal testimony.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Norma. Okay, then we will close that budget hearing on the State Library. And we will welcome Martin, the fiscal analyst of the Kansas Historical Society. I've got to run quickly to something, a meeting, but my vice chair, Representative Wassinger, is going to take over just for a few minutes.
All right, thank you, Martin. We're ready when you are.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. I will be presenting the State Historical Society's budget overview. On the first page at the top, you'll have an overview of the operating expenditures. On the bottom, you'll have a narrative of the agency overview. This agency is tasked with identifying, collecting, preserving, and interpreting materials and information pertaining to Kansas history. They also administer state and federal historic preservation programs and provide curriculum materials to state history to K through 12 schools. This is done through their 5 programs, which are listed below and onto the next page. The next 2 pages list the major issues from previous years and give you a little bit of a background. On the bottom of page 3, the second half, you'll have a budget summary and the key points, which we will be going over in this budget. On page 5 is a list of the performance measures, which were identified by the agency and the governor's office. Following that, you'll have a budget trend. On page 6, page 7 will give you a further breakdown of the operating, operating budget. And I would like to begin on page 8 with the fiscal year 2021 overview. I'll begin at the bottom beneath the change from approved budget. So the agency estimates FY 2021 total expenditure of $7.6 million. This includes $4.5 million from the SGF. The 21 revised estimate is an all funds increase of $45,609 or 0.6% above the FY 21 approved amount. The revised estimate includes a reduction of $20,576 or 0.5% from the SGF and an increase of $66,185 from special revenue funds from the approved amount. The revised estimate includes 85.5 FTE positions, which is an increase of 1 position above the approved number. The revised estimate includes operating expenditures of $7.2 million. This includes $4.3 million from the SGF. This is an all funds decrease of $56,891 or 0.8% and an SGF decrease of $20,576 or 0.5% below the approved amount. The decrease is attributable to the decreased expenditure on salaries and wages due to an increase in employee retirement and resignations and the agency leaving some authorized FTE positions vacant. On the following page, on page 9 at the top, the revised estimate also includes a capital improvements budget of $352,500. This includes $250,000 from the SGF. The capital improvement expenditure is an increase of $102,500 or 41% from the special revenue funds, and this is above the approved amount. Special revenue funds increase is attributable to increasing gifts and grants to the agency. The governor recommends an FY 2021 total expenditure of $7.6 million, including $4.5 million from the SGF. This is an all funds increase of $4,500, all from special revenue funds, or 0.1% above the agency's 21 revised estimate. The governor recommends a 21 operating expenditures of $7.2 million, including $4.3 million from the SGF. This is an all funds increase of $4,500 or 0.1% above the agency's revised estimate. The all funds increase is due to the governor including $4,500 transfer from the Coronavirus Relief Fund recommended by Spark Task Force and approved by the State Finance Council. The transfer was approved after the agency submitted its budget and therefore is not included in the agency's revised estimate. The governor further recommends an FY 2021 capital improvement expenditure of $352,500, and this includes $250,000 from the SGF. This is the same as the agency's FY 21 revised capital improvements estimate. Below that, you'll have a breakdown of the governor's allotments for this agency. The total allotments for this agency is a total of $691,703. In the table, you'll see that it is broken down from the operating expenditures, Humanities Kansas, and rehabilitation and repair, which is aligned with their capital improvements. On the following, and with that, I conclude FY 2021, and I'll stand for questions.
Questions for FY 2021 from the committee? Not seeing any, I'll let you go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On page 10, we have the FY 2022 budget request. Underneath the table, the agency requests a total expenditure of $7.8 million. This includes $5.2 million from the SGF. The 22 request is an all funds increase of $250,942 or 3.3%, and an SGF increase of $679,837 or 15.1% above the 21 revised estimate. This includes a special revenue funds decrease of $428,895 or 13.9% below the revised estimate. The SGF increase is primarily attributable to the agency's enhancement requests, and the request does include 85.5 FTE positions, which is the same number as the 21 revised estimate. The 2022 request includes operating expenditures of $6.9 million, including $4.3 million from the SGF. The request is an all funds decrease of $331,558 or 4.6% below the agency's 21 revised estimate. This includes an SGF increase of $29,837 or 0.7% and a special revenue fund decrease of $361,395 or 12.1% from the 21 revised estimate. The request includes 85.5 FTE positions, which is the same number as the FY21 approved estimate or revised estimate. The special revenue fund decrease is primarily attributable to decreased expenditures for other assistance, particularly the historic preservation fund grants. Additionally, there was a reduction in fees collected due to the COVID-19 pandemic at their sites and locations. The governor recommends an FY 2022 total expenditures of $7.1 million. This includes $4.3 million from the SGF. This is an all funds decrease of $789,327 or 10.1%, and an SGF decrease of $904,327 or 17.4% below the agency's FY 2022 request. The governor recommends operating expenditures of $6.5 million. This includes $3.8 million from the SGF, and this is a decrease of $454,327, all from the SGF, or 6.6% below the agency's FY21 revised estimate. This SGF decrease is due to the governor's recommending the implementation of the reduced resources budget, which would eliminate funding for 6 FTE positions and 1 part-time position. On the following page, at the top of page 11, the governor recommends an FY 2022 capital improvements expenditures of $600,000. This includes $450,000 from the SGF. This is an all funds decrease of $335,000 or 35.8%, and an SGF decrease of $450,000 or 50% below the agency's 2022 request. The governor recommends reducing the SGF rehab and repair request by 50%, but this is partially offset the reduction by adding $115,000 from the Education Building Fund for repairs to the agency's headquarters due to flood damage. I would like to note to the committee that the $115,000 would need to be a transfer from the Board of Regents to the agency. The Education Building Fund is housed underneath the Board of Regents and would need to take a transfer to get it over there. Below that, you'll have a breakdown of the enhancements for 2022. Below the table, the agency requests FY 2022 enhancement total of $650,000, all from the state general fund. The funds were previously approved in 21, but they were allotted by the governor as part of the governor July 21 allotment plan. The enhancement addresses the delayed maintenance to the entrance and lobby portion of the Kansas Museum of History. The governor recommends $200,000, all from SGF, for capital improvements to the entrance and lobby of the Kansas Museum. So she partially funded the enhancement request. Below that, yes.
Pardon me for interrupting you. What page are you on? You start to get through so many numbers where I'm a little lost. I found where you were and then it was gone. So I think we all are kind of flipping through the pages and missing where you are.
All right, not a problem, and I apologize for going so quickly. I am on page 11. So we are discussing the FY 2022 request, and I just completed going over the enhancements, which are at the top of the page.
Thank you. I didn't mean for you to stop. I just needed you to tell us where we were and help us as you go along. Thank you.
Okay. So I would like to begin with the bottom of the page on page 11. This is the reduced resources budget. The agency submitted a 2022 reduced resources budget of $454,327, all from the state general fund. The agency states it only uses SGF for statutorily required programs. The agency notes that the reduced resources budget will primarily impact salaries and wages across all their programs and would result in the elimination of funding for 6 FTE positions and 1 part-time position, and it would further reduce an additional 1 FTE position to a part-time position. The agency also indicates that this would affect the ability to respond to any public inquiries, complete educational materials, printing and maintaining its current online presence, which is used by millions of people. The agency notes that the reduction could create an inability to respond to emergencies at any of its 58 buildings and structures across the state. The reduced resources would eliminate commodity expenditures for program supplies used for COVID-19 related expenses. And furthermore, the agency would eliminate funds for new special exhibits. Humanities Kansas would experience a 10% reduction to its funding, resulting in a reduction of 15 communities being able to receive community resources and assistance to produce local heritage activities. The governor recommends implementing this reduced resources budget for FY 2022. With that, I will stand for questions for fiscal year 2022.
Are there any questions from the committee? Yes, Representative Riley.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Can you explain a little bit more of that transfer that you were talking about out of higher education budget, why that wasn't just developed over in that budget for the repair of that one building rather than it being cut out of this one, please? Thank you.
Martin, you want me to take that?
Go for it, Shirley.
There's 3 building funds within the state budget system. There's Educational Building Fund, which is specifically for the universities for their rehab and repair. There's a State Institutions Building Fund for other agencies, specific agencies. And then there's a Correctional Institutions Building Fund specific to corrections. About 3 years ago, the legislature moved the Educational Building Fund into the Board of Regents budget as a no-limit fund. Therefore, in order for the governor to provide Educational Building Fund to the Historical Society, it will have to be a transfer out of the Board of Regents budget into the Historical Society.
Does that answer your question? Thank you very much, Shirley. I appreciate that. Are there any other questions? Yes, Representative Hammack.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Martin, you said that there were, of the 85 FTE positions, that there were some that will remain unfilled. You have a number on that?
I do not have the current numbers in front of me, but the agency is here and they may be able to provide that
Thanks, Mark.
afterwards.
All right, there was one more question from Representative Fairchild.
It says for 2021, the total expenditures were 7.6 million, including 4.5 million from the state general fund. So I guess I would assume that the other 3.1 million comes from fees.
They also, they receive funding from fees at their locations, at the museums. They also receive federal funding. I believe that is correct, and I'm sure they will correct me if it's not. But they do receive federal funding for some of their projects that match with the state funding. All other funds, special revenue funds, these include any other type of revenue that are not provided by the state general fund.
Okay, yes. Representative Riley has one more question.
Follow up on that, then. I believe that the governor's residence is a historical residence, is it not? Or does it fall under this someplace and we're missing that? Thank you.
I am not sure on that, but I'm seeing some heads nodding in approval that you are correct.
Yes, it looks like Jenny is, yes, it is part.
Are you ready? Do you want me to answer it? This is Jenny.
Yes, Jenny, would you please answer that?
That question. We are involved with the governor's mansion as a historic building, and we help supervise it. Their budget, though, falls under the governor's budget, which is then under the Department of Administration. So their budget is not, even though we're involved with it and we play a role in it, it's not in our budget. That's the simple answer.
It was a very good question. I was not aware of that. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? If not, we can go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next few pages have a breakdown of all their programs. I will not go into those in detail, but those are the 5 programs that are operating within this agency. I would like to turn to page 25, which is a list of their capital improvements. Their capital improvements will be heard in front of the Joint Building Committee tomorrow. So for capital improvements, this is a further breakdown. So for fiscal year 2021, the agency estimates a revised capital improvement budget of $352,500. This includes the $250,000 from the SGF. This is an all funds increase of the $102,500, 41% above the FY21 approved amount. This includes the special revenue funds of $102,500, or 100% above their approved amount. The SGF is the same as their approved amount. And below, you'll see the rehab and repair. So that for rehab and repair, the agency estimates $250,000, all from the SGF, and that these monies are used to conduct unanticipated repairs for more than 50 buildings located at their 16 historic sites and the State Historical Society headquarters in Topeka. Projects include repairs to the roofs, windows, doors, heating, air conditioning, plumbing, and these projects are selected based on urgency of need and public safety and the preservation of historic buildings. This request also includes funding for the Shawnee Indian Mission West Building. The agency estimates expenditures of $20,000, all from special revenue funds to rehabilitate the West Building at the Shawnee Indian Mission State Historic Site. The state has partnered with the city of Fairway to operate the Shawnee Indian Mission and to complete the rehab and repairs of the West Building. The project is funded by federal funds and private money raised by a nonprofit organization affiliated with the city of Fairway. And planned work are to repair the historic features, including installation of a historic door. Additionally, Cottonwood Ranch, the agency estimates expenditures of $82,500, all from special revenue funds to rehabilitate the Cottonwood Ranch House near Studley, Kansas, in Sheridan County. The planned work is the replacement of roofs of the ranch house, a barn, and multiple buildings located on the historic property. And the governor does concur with the agency's revised estimate for FY 2021. I'll stand for questions on 21, or I could move to 22 for the capital improvements.
Questions from the committee? Not, we'll have you move on to 2022.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the very bottom of the page, on page 25, for 2022, the agency requests expenditures of $935,000. This includes $900,000 from the State General Fund. This is an all funds increase of $582,500, or 165.2% above the FY21 revised capital improvement estimate. The request includes an SGF increase of $650,000, or 260%, and a special revenue fund decrease of $67,500, or 65.9% from the FY21 revised estimate. The SGF increase is attributable to the enhancement request to renovate the entrance and lobby for the Kansas Museum of History. The special revenue fund decrease is attributable to planned completion of some work at the Shawnee Indian Mission State Historic Site and the Cottonwood Ranch Historic Site. And below, you'll see the individual breakdowns. The agency requested $250,000 for rehab and repairs. Again, this is for more than 50 buildings at their locations, and the projects are selected based on the urgency, public safety, and preservation. You'll have an explanation of the Kansas Museum of History. So the $650,000, all from the State General Fund, is to renovate the entrance and lobby of the Kansas Museum of History. As the renovation of the Kansas Museum of History, according to the agency, the museum gallery has not changed since the museum opened in 1984. The agency's goal is to update the permanent exhibits to make them more interactive and immersive, with an emphasis on the moments in Kansas history when Kansas made a significant impact on American history. Additionally, the agency indicates new exhibits are needed to meet current audience needs and to ensure museum generates appropriate revenue for its continued operation. I would like to jump down below to the Constitution Hall. The agency requests $35,000, all from special revenue funds, to rehab the Constitution Hall located in Lecompton, Kansas. The planned work includes exterior painting repairs and interior plaster repairs. The governor recommends the capital improvement expenditures of $600,000, including $450,000 from the SGF for FY 2022. This is an all funds decrease of $335,000, or 35.8%, and all funds decrease, both the all funds decrease and the SG decrease are due to the governor partially recommending the agency's enhancement request to repair the Kansas Museum of History, and the all funds decrease is partially offset by the recommendation of that $115,000, all from special revenue funds, to repair flooding damage at the agency's headquarters. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you very much, Martin. We appreciate it. Are there any other questions for Martin at this time? All right. And if I don't see any questions, I would believe that Matthew Chappelle, is it Chappelle, is next? Is that correct?
I think I am Jenny Chin. I'm speaking for the
Okay.
agency. I'm the executive director.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. You go ahead.
Okay, I notice your time's short, so I'll try to shortcut this a little bit. You should have some testimony, 3-page testimony from us. Some of you know us and some of you don't. Just briefly, we've been around a long time. We were founded in 1875 with the mission of really collecting and providing for the population the facts and stories of Kansas history. As many of you know, we had a grand entrance into the Union and our fight over slavery, and your forefathers and mothers, as well as mine, thought it was important that this be preserved. But I wanted to just give you a couple little things that you may not know about the agency and our programs. Is we are a consolidated agency. In many other states, we would be 3 to 4 different agencies. State agencies, but in Kansas, we have always consolidated all historic and preservation things into one agency. And I would like to say that we do own 58 buildings, but we carry no debt. So all of those buildings have come to us through the legislature. We have 3 major programs. One is the State Archives, which makes sure that records are available. This is for transparency of government. We are responsible for helping to create retention and disposition schedules for all state agencies, the universities, and all of the counties in Kansas to make sure that the state is saving the records they need legally long term. Also under this are such things as land survey. We work with all the surveyors in the state when you buy property to make sure that we have the correct records. So all of those records are with us, and we work directly with the land surveyors. And we are also involved with the Law Enforcement Memorial in that we keep track. This is a program we wish we didn't have to, but because the Law Enforcement Memorial, of course, records those public servants who die in under the constraints of their duty. And so we wish we had no one on that list, but we keep things like that list. We also are responsible for all state records, including the state constitution. We have another program called the Cultural Resources that provides incentives for historic buildings across the state. We work with what are special partners called certified local governments, and there are several across the state of Kansas that have made it a priority for their city to preserve their built environment, and we provide them with federal pass-through funds through grants. Our incentives include both grants, outright grants, and also tax credits that come through. But we're also responsible in facilitating state and federal preservation laws. So for that reason, we're responsible for unmarked burials in the state and the Antiquities Act to make sure that no one is digging up human remains and that they are treated properly. We also run 17 state historic sites, including Fort Hays. And we just gotten a grant money from the feds, a competitive grant program to provide grants to the rural communities in the state of under 30,000 that are not in a metropolitan area. And these will help with rural revitalization in the state. In education, we're responsible for K through 12 curriculum in state history. In particular, the state requires by statute the teaching of Kansas history. It's generally done at 7th grade. We've just completed through a public-private partnership the 3rd edition of the state textbook for Kansas history, and that's out in the schools this year. But we also have our Kansas Museum of History that we are talking about redoing their exhibits, and because they're 37 years old at this point, and we through that program we do preserve other collections such as the state's Civil War battlefields, battle flags. And so they also run the Capitol Visitor Center. Excuse me, I'm trying to get through this fast for your time. So if you would look at my testimony and look down at the bottom of page 1, there's a chart of our visitation, and this is visitation. So that means one person may visit us once a year, other people may come 10 times a year. But if you notice, we made a radical shift about 2013, and that was to put more of our programs online so that you didn't have to go to Topeka, for instance, to look up your family's genealogy. So since that time, we have seen dramatic growth. And I point this out because we have completely switched how we deliver things to the public. So our numbers today count both the in-person visits and the electronic visits. And last year, which surprised me, we were this high, but this shift was made for a year of COVID-19. We still came in at serving over 26 million people, and which is a lot for an agency this size. On my second page, I'm turning to just give you a brief overview of the current state of the agency. In here, I wanted to talk a little bit about funding. Our funding is a mix of state general fund, federal funds, fees that we charge the public for certain programs like to enter the museum. Special revenues, we give grants called Heritage Trust Funds, and that's a special revenue. Plus we get gifts from the public, and we do fundraising, which we'll hear about in a minute. We are like any business during COVID-19. Because we charge fees, we are losing approximately $50,000 in fees a month. So we are like other small businesses that are having the same kind of problem. We recognize why that's happening, but it is a concern of ours. Martin mentioned that we had gotten some CRF funds, and that was for protective equipment to preserve the programs that are open to the public. I do want to mention before I go into our ask is the effect of a 10% state general fund budget reduction. It gives us pause. We are very concerned about it because most of our state general fund money goes to either utilities or to salaries. Those are the two biggest expenses. Our salaries are considerable because we are the keepers of the state's papers and the state's collections. And because of that, in order to preserve those long term, a stable temperature and humidity control is necessary. So we can't negotiate on our utilities. So we see that as a fixed cost. So the only other place to cut is in staff salaries. We have lost quite a few positions over the last 14 years. And when 14 years ago, we had about 140 staff. Today, we have about 70 staff members with the positions are filled. Once we knew this 10% was a possibility, we did start leaving some positions open so we could address this, hopefully without layoffs. And so we are holding some open, but it will not be enough to meet the 10%. So you probably will see program changes next year. But with the time we have a lot, let me get to our request. We are actually asking you today if you will consider an approval of the governor's budget for the Kansas Historical Society. Although we'd like to mediate the effects of the 10% reduction, we understand why that is needed, and we understand that revenues are down, and we will do our part as we can. But we have some capital improvements that have become extremely important to us. The first, and this will, this is in the first, I should say, in our current year budget, we are making no changes or asking for nothing new. In the current year, you do see 650,000. That is the allotment that was taken out of our budget because of COVID. And that was some repairs to the Kansas Museum of History that we'll talk about in a minute because I'm re-asking for part of that. But really your focus, I guess, today would be 2022. And we have two capital improvements that the governor did include in our budget that we would like to ask you to approve if possible. One is flood damage. It's $115,000 in flood damage. And if you look on the third page of the series of photographs at the top, you can see some of the flood damage that happened on July 30th, 2020. This was an extremely fast storm that moved over the west. We are in the west part of Topeka, moved over in the western portion of Topeka, dropped a lot of rain really fast and flooded. We have a creek that runs through our 80 acres that we own out here, and it flooded very, very quickly. I have been here a while, and I have never seen a flood like this on this property. It wasn't just us, it was also the properties around us. But we had to evacuate the building because it washed out immediately. I've never seen anything quite like it. Our road in and out of the facility. And so we evacuated the building, and then next day came and looked at the damage. We were able ourselves to make minor repairs. We repaired the road and some other things, and then we sort of went on. But over time, we started to realize that we had more damage than we thought we did. And we asked an on-call engineer that is with the state to please come in and to look at the property and see if it's safe. And we realized after that visit that we had serious damage to the fire lane storm drain and the entry drive culverts. This is a problem on several levels. The storm drain, if that's not fixed, quite frankly, that is the fire lane. And that would mean that the fire department at some point could not get in if we had a fire. And
Jenny, if I could just interrupt you for 1 second, I'm sorry. This is Susan Humphreys. I so appreciate what you're doing. I know your time was pretty short. So if you think you could wrap us up pretty soon, we would appreciate it. I need to get these folks on to other committees and things.
okay, so what we're asking for
Thank
is
you.
to repair the damage. The second one is last year we asked for 650,000 and you all did approve that. And the 650,000 came out as the governor's allotment. With that time, I was able to find a private donor who would pay 450,000 of that amount, but asked for us if we could still match the state, the 200,000. So this year I came back in for the 200,000. And so we are also asking, and the governor did approve, that you approve the governor's budget for the Kansas Historical Society.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for wrapping that up. Committee, do you have any questions? Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Jenny. My question is, you want the 650,000, but it looks like you've raised 450,000 and the governor was going to match it. So I'm a little confused.
No, oh, excuse me. I just went too fast. I want the 200,000 is part of what she gave us. We have the 450. I've reduced what I'm asking for because I was able to get 450. So what I need is the money for the collapsed culverts, which is 115,000, and then another 200,000, which is to put back in to fix all the cement, though we did fix the ADA last year. I promised you I would do that, and we did. But we have all this other damage that has come into the floor and to the cement. This facility is 37 years old, and we've not had to make a lot of repairs on it, but it is now very much needed. It's reached an age that we have some serious problems. So I'm asking just on that second project, 200,000. Which
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions? Yes, Representative Mix.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jenny, this is just a comment. Thanks for the recognition of Constitution Hall. Someday it would be great that we all went there just to have a short meeting ceremony, but it's a great place.
Yes, I agree. I think that would be great to have a field trip sometime. Okay, I am noticing a big increase in FT positions, and probably that was explained, excuse me for not, it was not explained. So I'm seeing it was 62.5 in fiscal year 2020 and has gone up to 85.5. So I don't know if that is a Martin question or a Jenny question. Jenny, I think you're muted.
Thank you for telling me that. Yes, I'm back. I will take that one. We had a mistake in our budget in when it was 62 that we recovered them the next year that they were taken out. We do not have all of those filled. We have 70 filled at this time. It depends on funds, but as we open the new exhibits at the Kansas Museum of History, which will cost $6 million, which is all private money, we will be making money again and having fees, and I need to refill those positions at that time. So I ask that you leave those FTEs, but we only fill as many as we can afford.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, committee, any other questions? Okay, I think that's it. Now, I would remind the committee that we are going to be doing recommendations tomorrow on the 4 hearings that we've had, 2 today and 2 yesterday. If you have any questions, I'm assuming Jenny, Martin, Norma, Shirley are available to answer any of your private questions if you would like them. Representative Riley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And maybe tomorrow, before you do that, you can give us a tutorial on how we go through that procedure so that we understand how that budget works or how we make those recommendations. Thank you.
I will do the best I can. Yes. Okay, thank you. Committee, then we're adjourned.